This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello and welcome to Tracks from the Edge, Trek FM's podcast in which we do audio commentaries for every single episode of Star Trek Discovery. This is episode 6, which I believe is pronounced Lethe? Whatever. I don't know how you pronounce it. Do you know how you pronounce it? I don't know. There's a character from the original series with this name, but it's like the river of forgetfulness to Hades or something. Whatever.
Yeah, I thought it was Lethe, but it could be Lethe.
Well, we'll go with one of those two things. I'm your host, Mike, and today I'm joined by Max. How's it going, Max?
Okay.
That's good. So, okay, we're gonna be watching episode 6, but I wanted to sort of like ask you this ahead of time because I think it's kind of interesting.
Okay.
In some of our conversations, you've expressed the fact that you're not tremendously impressed by Discovery yet. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, it hasn't blown me away at this point.
And I think that that's interesting because, I mean, I think the majority of people here on the network and everything, the majority of people on The Edge do like it a lot. And, you know, there's obviously been this sort of like vocal minority of people, I think mainly people who haven't seen it, who, you know, don't like it or are basically like refusing to accept it as, you know, part of the Star Trek that they know and love and everything like that. And there isn't that much in between. And, you know, it's gotten to the point where, I mean, like the other day I saw someone saying like, you know, if there's so much good in this show that if you don't like it, then you just don't want to like it, you know, like that sort of thing. And I'm like, that seems weird and kind of wrong. And like, I really get the impression that with you, it's not like you set out to dislike this show, right? You weren't like...
I subscribe to this CBS All Access nonsense. You don't do that for one show when you're like, I'm on the fence about this.
Oh, there's a lot of people who would do it just to hate watch the show, you know? That's certainly true. But yeah, right, exactly, right? Like, I mean...
I was like, all right, this is fascinating. I gotta find out what's going on here. I mean, if they think they can sell like a new platform on one Star Trek show, I gotta find out what this Star Trek show is. And right at the outset, I was like, okay, I think I know what they're doing. They're going for the Star Trek 2009, you know, big audience kind of crowd. That's what they're going for. And then it kind of like deviate away from that, and I was like, I don't know who they're going for, but I don't think it's me.
See, like to me, I mean, I guess I kind of thought it was like I was up for that thing at the beginning, but then when it deviated or whatever, I was like, I have no idea where this is going, and I love the fact that I don't know where it's going. Like, it's gotten to the point now where I won't even watch the promo for next week's episode because I don't want to know where it's going at all. I just want to be surprised, you know? And I think it's going to some really cool places. I'm definitely a big fan of it so far, you know. I do want to kind of reserve judgment until the entire season is over. But, you know, so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing. But, you know, I know that you and it's not like in my conversations or text messages with you or whatever, it's not like I get the impression that you're like, burn this show to the ground. You're just kind of like, it's not impressed me yet. It hasn't impressed me yet.
Yeah, I'm not stabbing at anyone from Hell's Heart.
You're like the Shania Twain of Star Trek Discovery fans.
I don't know what you are saying, but no.
It doesn't impress you much. That's what I'm saying.
You're a bad person.
I can live with that. I have to say that I'm kind of surprised that you don't like it yet. Like, knowing you and knowing your tastes, I kind of would have thought that you would have been into this at this point. But I also have no idea what you think about this episode, which we're about to watch. And I'm curious to see how that will unfold over the next 44 minutes and 30 seconds. So, if you're ready, we can start up this commentary. We are just past the CBS All Access logo here in the States. If you're elsewhere, go past whatever streaming platform you're on. Hopefully your streaming platform works. That's a nice feature in streaming platforms. And just so you're in the black right before the first picture for the previously on thing starts up. It's about 8 seconds here on CBS All Access. And if you're ready, Max, we will start it up in 3, 2, 1, start. Okay, so previously on, there's that ship again, and there's Cole.
Klingon ship, albedo Klingon.
Ship, yep. Who's totally not Voke at all. He's totally Voke. Not Voke.
Wait.
He is Voke. Ash, Tyler, whatever. I can't keep these names straight.
All right, so here's the dumb thing that apparently has been going on, because the third episode, like, it ends with, like, the two Klingons and the one is like all defeated, and
the fourth one,
whatever, doesn't matter, who cares? And I don't remember the name of the female Klingon, but she's like,
Laurel,
like, I can take you somewhere, and like, they can help you get what you want, but you'll have to sacrifice everything. Mm-hmm. And up until this point, like, he's following Takovma the Unforgettable, who I've forgotten about. And his whole thing was, like, being Klingon and Klingonness and not assimilating with the Federation and not talking with them because they're terrible. And that was, like, the whole thing. And the idea of them, like, him sacrificing everything, like, that plus the thought in my brain all along that, like, these Klingons don't look right, from a canonical perspective, like, the nerd part of my brain is like, I don't know how they're gonna make this work. And, like, she said that, and I was like, oh, if he like transforms himself into looking like a human, then that might explain why a bunch of Klingons look a lot more like humans in the original series. That would explain that. But then it was like, that's dumb.
Well, I don't know. Like I think that it's interesting that because everyone else was kind of speculating, I think, more from the production angle, like looking at, like, credits and stuff and piecing that together with what we see in episode 5. And,
so there's like something in the credit, like, because we don't know.
It's if you look at the credits, it's almost a certain thing. Like, the person who's credited as Voke has never.
They're the disco shirts.
There are the disco shirts, and hey, you know what? Let me talk about these disco shirts. Sorry, Voke. All
right, let's talk about disco shirts.
Okay, so back at the San Diego Comic-Con. Now, I mean, right when the show was announced as Star Trek Discovery, and everyone's like, "Oh, is the abbreviation STD?" Brian Fuller was the first person who was like, "No, it's disco." Woohoo! And I fell in love with that instantly, and have adopted it in basically every conversation which I've had about this show. And, it's become like a thing. And, at San Diego Comic-Con, Aaron Harberts, the showrunner, was wearing this shirt. And I'm like, that's the most amazing shirt. I want that shirt. And then a couple weeks ago at the New York Comic-Con, Michelle Yeoh was wearing one of those shirts. And I'm like, oh my God, this must be something that they gave to like the cast and crew. And I tweeted the John Van Sitters, the head of licensing or whatever it is at CBS. And I'm like, hey, any chance of you guys selling these shirts? And he just tweeted back, seems likely. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then the promo comes up for, on After Trek, like the scene from next week's episode. And it's, them in the shirts. And I'm like, holy crap, that shirt is canon? Oh my God, I need it now. And then the next day, StarTrek.com's like, here's where you can buy the shirt for $27. And I'm like, I'll take two. So yeah, I love that shirt so much. I love the fact that it's a thing. I love that it's canon. Because, I'm all about, like, the practical cosplay, right? Like, I'm not going to dress up as a stormtrooper, but I will wear my Indiana Jones jacket, I mean, I suppose. My wedding...
You do frequently dress like a white sock.
This is true. I mean, my wedding ring is the same ring that, what's his name? Ed Harris has in The Abyss. So, I take cosplay to a practical level, I'd like to think. So now... I can go to conventions dressed as Tilly or Aaron Harberts, whichever you prefer. So here,
I can't do Tilly. I'm going to be Tilly.
Okay, well, you got the red hair, so you can pull it off.
That's right.
Yeah. Back to Tyler Volk, since that's what we're dealing with here. Yes, if you look at the credits, for one thing, the guy who's credited with playing Volk is someone who has no other credits at all. And also, I think it was Bruce Gibson who discovered that Shazad Latif, this actor here playing Tyler, that's a stage name, and his real last name is the same last name as the guy credited with playing Volk. So take that as you will. But yes.
So this is that side of this particular conspiracy theory. That's much more practical, and it's much more like follow the money than my like wild JFK conspiracy theory imaginings.
But that's why I thought it was interesting, because you're like, I haven't even watched episode 5 yet, and I'm like, well, you got to watch it so that you can hear this crazy fan theory. And you're like, oh, is it that Volk is going to be turned into a human? And I'm like, what? Because I knew you didn't know anything about Shazad Latif, or anything that was going on behind the scenes of this show, So I thought that was like really interesting that you had come up with that theory in universe before everyone else came up with it, because of all of the behind the scenes stuff, coupled with the in universe stuff that you see in the episode that you hadn't watched yet. So
yeah, I told Emily about our conversation before we watched this episode, the previous one, and she was, and like I told her about the whole thing and my theory, and she was watching the episode, and she was like, "Yeah, I think you're right." And I was like, I don't think I'm right. This is just a thought I had, and I think it's a dumb idea. Like, it's kind of an easy answer to a very complicated problem. It's like, how do you deal with this whole thing? How do you get Volk back in the story? Well, the easiest thing, if he just has access to some sort of medical magic and can inexplicably turn himself into a person, and then somehow get past every possible security measure to just get on the ship. I mean, nuts.
To be fair, like, I think that there is something more going on, because it really does seem like he's taking on the personality of this person who exists, right? Like, I don't think that he knows that he's Volk. You know what I mean? There's like some sort of weird Manchurian candidate, like, brainwashing thing going on here. You know what I mean? So
you think he sleeper celled himself? He pulled a boomer,
right? Exactly. Yes, he totally boomered himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay,
that's not bad. That works. I mean, that's better. That's better than him just like going like, I could kind of pull off that guy's look.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
and like, can I get the accent? And he works on the accent, goes to like a workshop,
Yeah.
you know, and he's like, and like his teacher's like, you're getting in the way, you're overthinking it. And they have like a big fight and like he storms out, but like in the last moment, when he curses out his teacher, he nails the accent.
Yeah, right. And
I hope we get that episode soon.
All right, so here we're finishing up the opening title sequences, written by Joe Menosky and Ted Sullivan, directed by Douglas Aroniokoski. That makes me so happy
for that.
On every single level. You know, Joe Menosky, I recently counted. Joe Menosky, he's written more episodes of Star Trek than all but 4 people. This is his 55th episode of Star Trek. That's crazy. I didn't think he wrote nearly that many. And this is Ted Sullivan's very first episode, and he's the 381st person to write an episode of Star Trek. So there you go.
Okay. It's a lot of peeps.
I mean, you texted me like while you were watching this saying that Tilly's your favorite character, and I have to say that like this sequence at the beginning of the episode, I think has kind of catapulted her to my number one favorite as well. Although I do like Burnham a lot too. But yeah, I think that this is a very charming sequence for these characters.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really nobody else seems to have a personality, you know. It's kind of weird, you know.
She even
like
comments
Saru
on that.
is defined by being, you know, like I don't really like this, you guys. Come on, you guys. Let's not do that, you guys. Like that's his thing, and the captain's thing is, I think it would be cool if we stabbed the hostage, and then he wouldn't have the hostage anymore. Wouldn't that be easy? You know, like they're all sort of defined by one thing, but Tilly's thing is just sort of like, yeah, she's a person.
I mean, I think that's cool.
You know, she's got a point of view, and like she's a member of the crew, and she's not defined by like a character trait, except that she's nervous and talks a lot.
I don't know. Like, I think they're all kind of like I really do think like the character of the captain is evolving quite a bit from episode to episode.
I'm not saying that they're bad characters. I'm just saying that they're not interesting to me.
Okay.
Like to me, the captain is like he's a perfectly good dramatic figure. Like I have some serious problems with this episode, but
so okay.
Like they work. I'm not saying they're 2-dimensional. I'm just saying that I've seen those guys in Star Trek before.
Okay, fair enough.
Tilly's kind of new to Star Trek.
So this sequence is where I was like, oh yes, this is definitely Menosky, isn't it? You know, I mean, as soon as you see like her like being catapulted through space and everything. There's Amanda, played by Mia Kirshner, by the way, who played Mandy on 24. So that's exciting.
24 is the thing you're going to reference for her credits? Come on.
I mean, what? I mean,
have you forgotten about? I'm going to skip the obvious one and go with The Crow, City of Angels.
I haven't seen The Crow, City of Angels. I think,
you got to watch that movie. It's legitimately bad, but it's one of the best, like, visually I've ever seen.
Okay. Movies? Just movies? One of the best movies visually?
One of the best, like, one of the most beautifully shot and designed. Like, the production design is amazing.
Okay.
It's like I don't know how to describe it. Everything is like, it's like a post-apocalyptic urban film.
Okay. Well, I'll check it out. And she's got her Alice in Wonderland book with her. And, oh yeah, right there.
More of this weird,
Menosky.
Third Eye kind of, like
Dr.
weird
Strange-ish.
hippie posters.
Yep.
Yeah, Doctor Strange is a good one. That's a good touchstone.
Yeah. I like it. I was hoping, because I mean, like that. Obviously, as everyone knows, that's Menosky's thing. He's known as the guy who does, the weird crap. And I was hoping we were going to get some weird crap in this episode, and we did.
Yeah. It's not as weird as, like, nothing will ever be as weird as masks.
This is true. This is true.
I think about that periodically and just think, man, that was so nuts. I miss those days when, like, you'd turn on, like, Star Trek and see what they were up to and watch just the weirdest thing you'd ever seen.
Yeah, they would do some weird stuff in the next gen era for sure. For sure. So this is interesting because I don't know, maybe I missed something, or maybe I was tracking something weird or whatever, but from reading David Mack's book, I got the impression that Sarek did the Kotrick whatever with her when her parents were killed, when the whatever it was bombed by the Klingons. I didn't realize that there were 2 attacks, which I guess is what's revealed right now.
Isn't, like, she's in the Vulcan, like, learning pods when he finds her all injured and whatnot.
Yeah, I guess I was just under the impression that, like, I guess that makes sense. I don't know. For some reason, I didn't put that together. I was just kind of under the impression that maybe since she was living on Vulcan, and I think they even say this, like, in the book, like, she's like, she asks her parents to get her hair cut to look like a Vulcan, so that she can fit in or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, like, I don't think that it's, I don't find it surprising that you would, like, interpret it that way, because she does have not one, but 2, like, tragic attacks in her backstory.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a limit to how much you can pack into a backstory,
Mm-hmm.
If at some point she's like, oh, yeah, I was also briefly lived with a Romulan exchange student. It was a whole thing. Like, you can't keep packing in details to someone's backstory before you start thinking that you're using the past as a way to slide aces into your hand.
And I mean, I'm not going to, like, accuse them of doing that, because that's obviously something which they had built in from the beginning. I mean, we see her, with that at the attack, the attack aftermath in the pod in, like, the very first episode. So,
yeah, I don't think that they did this to, I don't think that they added another attack at some point, like, oh, we need a second one in order to establish these Vulcan extremists. I don't think that's what happened. I just think that they played the, terrorist incident twice, which is kind of a problem.
So here we have Stamets post mushroom injection ship jumping Stamets. And
right, he's on mushrooms.
Exactly. Which I think is literally what they were going for here.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool. Or should I say
yeah,
groovy.
I love it when the joke explains the plot.
No, that's good, right? I mean, that's good.
No, not
writing.
really. It's not
No?
really.
Okay.
It's kind of easy.
I thought that's something that you'd totally be into,
I don't have a problem with a lot of things. I don't like his change of character. If he had established, like, at some point earlier on that he could get excited by a really weird idea and throw caution to the wind to explore it, I'd be like, okay, that sounds good. But they never really did that before.
I think they did, because he's the one who was, for one thing, he got, like, really excited when talking about mushrooms in that shuttle pod in that first scene. And then, when the tardigrade is like, oh, when they hook it up and they're like, the tardigrade talks to mushrooms. He's like, that's not fair. I always wanted to talk to my mushrooms, So I think they were laying the groundwork, but I think it's also clear that, this is a mind-altering activity. And I mean, I don't know if you watched After Trek, but, they had a clip from next week's show, and you can see that he's kind of gone off the deep end, which is cool. So.
Yeah. I have a problem with, like, sci-fi cures. I have a real problem with the idea that, like, he injected himself with this thing that might do something they don't quite understand, and it might cause physiological and neurological changes that they can't anticipate, and he's still working at the station, and he's still at his job, and no one's like, let's just have you hang out for a while.
Well, I think that's what next episode is going to be about, to be honest. And,
okay.
I think what we're also establishing...
What if he just, like, had a stroke? Well, like in the middle of his shift? Like, it's not unlikely.
I think what we saw last episode and what we know about Lorca so far is, someone's probably brought that up, and they've been like, well, that would suck if that happened, wouldn't it? But you know what? We need to win this war, and that would just be a casualty of war. So... yeah, but I'm guessing that all this stuff that you're talking about is going to be dealt with next episode. It is kind of interesting, and I think this is the first time that we've really sort of seen this, where, like, this is an episode where the focus is really Burnham and Lorca, and then you've got, Tyler and Tilly in support, and, just as far as the six main characters are concerned, like Saru and Stamets. This is like one of those episodes where you see Worf in like one scene and then he's gone for the rest of the episode. It's kind of like that with like Saru and Stamets. And it's interesting to see that in like a show with, such a theoretically integrated storyline, although this really does feel like kind of a standalone episode in a lot of ways, obviously with threads which are going to continue, but
well, I mean, like, this is the episode where they establish that Lorca's boss basically wants to fire him. Mm-hmm. And then, because God really likes Lorca, she gets captured by Klingons.
See, I don't think that that's God really liking Lorca. I think that that's Lorca seeing what's going on and being like, you should totally go and do this. Because,
Yeah.
It would.
I don't disagree. I just also think, I feel like it could have gone either way, and it went the way that made things easier.
Well, yeah. I mean, as soon as he's like, she can do this, I'm like, oh, she's dead. I thought they were going to kill her, but
I did too. I was actually surprised that she survived to the end, but not surprised in a very good way. It was kind of like, okay, here's the dumb thing that's going to happen. And, they didn't do the same exact dumb thing I thought they were going to do.
I think it's fine. I think that, obviously if you're going to, they're setting something up. It's not like they wrote themselves into a corner and then they're like, how do we get out of this mess? Like, they literally set this up in this episode, right. Just a few minutes prior.
That's the problem when they telegraph the outcome.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We know Lorca's not going to be gone. Like, we know that he's still going to be there, like, in 2 and 3 and probably 6 weeks.
Yeah, but they could be setting up stuff later on, like when sure. Maybe it'll come to a thing where it's like, okay, you need to save her. But saving her means you're going to lose your ship, and then what's going to happen there? And maybe he will lose his ship, or whatever. But regardless, I think whatever happens, it's going to say a lot about Lorca. So, and speaking of Worf, which we just talked about a second ago, I do find it very interesting that this is a show where they have like a human female security chief who dies in season 1 and is replaced by a male Klingon Maybe.
I hope not.
Okay.
But yeah, probably. Yeah. Maybe they're just taking a cue from Lucas, those recurring motifs that keep playing themselves out over and over again. There's nothing you can do about them.
I think it's just kind of coincidence. It's like poetry. Yeah. It rhymes. That's his quote from the episode 1 documentary. It's like poetry. It rhymes. God. I do think that the photography in this scene is interesting, these sequences. I mean, there's some really weird compositions, like putting the actors on the side of the frame where they're, putting the dead space behind the actors' heads and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just cool.
I've definitely said, to my wife while watching it, like, the one thing you got to say is this is definitely the best Star Trek has ever looked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
and I'm including the movies. Like this is probably the height of its visual style.
I don't think it looks as good as Star Trek 09 or Into Darkness, but I think
That's fine. You're allowed to be wrong legally.
I think the single best looking Star Trek thing ever is Into Darkness. But so here we're getting the Susmana, which this totally feels like the Matrix. Like even the music, I'm like, this is totally the Matrix,
Yeah, she's jacked in. They're having a martial arts battle. It's a whole Matrix thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're quite up to Lawrence Fishburne and Keanu Reeves standards in terms of their combat skills, but, it is true, though. I mean, they made a joke about this on After Trek, but it's true how, this whole thing seems to be designed to sort of, grab your opponent's shoulder. I like that, It's cool, but it makes sense for Vulcan whatevers.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, it's not like our martial arts are all about protecting your testicles. I mean, it's kind of strange, right?
Well, I think that you just know that, if you grab, if you do a Vulcan neck pinch, that's instant, instant victory in a sense, instant knockout. But, yeah. So, okay, here we're getting some more backstory between Lorca and the Admiral.
They establish. This is the scene where they establish the incident in the past that has screwed him up somehow.
Well, I mean, they talked about it in the last episode,
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. He lost a ship or something, and apparently he was the only survivor, and he blew up the ship. I don't know how this all played out, but...
Well, yeah, we don't know yet, but that's what we know so far. And I guess that's the question. How did it all play out, I mean, you would think there's something... You would think that it wouldn't just be a case of, that dude from Titanic who, jumps on the boats after he's the one who told them to light the fourth boiler or whatever it is, I don't think that's going on. I think that there's
I don't get that Titanic reference.
That's okay.
All right.
But I think that it's more complex than that, but obviously that's how everyone else sees it. I mean, the fact that he's, he chose his pain and decided not to get his eyes fixed as a reminder of
I get it. You used the name of the episode from last week.
Yeah. Well, he says it too, but
I don't remember that. That's fine.
All right. So here we are back in the nebula.
Okay, so here's my thing. All right. I like your hypothesis that he boomered himself.
Mm-hmm.
But my problem with that is his dialogue in this scene.
In what way?
He basically says, here's the thing you obsess about, the thing you're ashamed of. The thing where you failed someone. You don't obsess about somebody else's failure. He's talking, he's saying, I know what it means to really feel bad about something and repress those feelings. I get that. You and me, we get that. Right? You know what I'm saying? I don't buy him saying that without being aware.
Okay, but what about the fact that he's able to say all of that using perfect English with all of the, familiar, quirks and slang type of things that we use instead of, this super duper formal English that, you would expect from someone who seems to have trouble speaking their own language, at a rapid rate.
I get what you're saying, but I would counter with, like, in this episode, they invented a machine to establish, like, a interstellar mind meld.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're playing real fast and loose with what is possible 10 years before the original series started.
Yeah, but I guess the thing about it to me is they've made such a big deal out of like the Klingon language element. The fact that all of the Klingon stuff is in Klingon. Like, if you were to do that and then just be like, yeah. And, like, I mean, even, last week when we saw Laurel speaking in English, and she had, like, an accent and everything, they talked about that on, after Trek, like, what would an accent sound like if a native Klingon speaker was speaking English, and they developed this whole thing to make it as realistic as possible. And then you have this Klingon who's probably never spoken English in his life come in and be like, hey guys, what's up? That's just weird. And I think maybe he does have both. Maybe he was somehow implanted with the memories of this guy who does exist. We know.
So you think they turnabout intrudered this situation?
I don't know. Maybe I don't remember exactly how that all played out. Unfortunately, I guess, but I don't know. I think that there is definitely some sort of, he is partially Ash Tyler mentally in some way or another. I don't know how, but I think he is.
Okay. I mean, like, we've really jumped ahead on this potential twist, and I still hope we're wrong.
It could be, But.
Like, that's the thing. I hope that we're wrong. Kind of skeptical about the possibility.
Well, I guess we'll see how they do it, how they deal with it, So
it really seems like a foregone conclusion, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a done deal, but whatever.
Okay, well, I think that I think it's more interesting if he remembers and knows everything from his life as a Klingon, and he's just in character. And if you need some sort of sci-fi explanation for his perfect English, English uploaded. I'm sure Harry Mudd knows a guy.
So here we're getting the history, the truth behind Sarek's relationship with Burnham and how he let her down.
Yep.
And I like what they're doing with Sarek here because I think it answers a lot of questions that have sort of been glossed over in previous incarnations of the character, where it's like, what's his deal with humans? Like, he's really got a thing for humans, which seems weird since he's so Vulcan and everything. And I like the idea that his whole thing seems to be like, and it makes sense with him being an ambassador and everything, like his whole thing seems to be like, the world will be a better place, or the galaxy will be a better place if humans and, Vulcans and anyone else, coexist and work together, and, they're equals and everything like that. And Vulcans being Vulcans are, basically racist and xenophobic and everything and elitist, and they don't want to let in these other, races. I think that's, we see a little bit of that on Enterprise, I think. But I think they've kind of like extended it into some interesting territory here, where the Vulcans are more sophisticated and the whole relationship between them is too. I don't know. I like that stuff. I think it's good.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I find it interesting that like we have to keep chipping away at Vulcan's logic, because seemingly the only storylines that we can tell about Vulcans are the ones where they do something that's emotional. I find that very frustrating, and it to me says, we don't really understand how to tell stories without emotion.
That could be, we're humans, right?
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of, to me, indicates that maybe if humans can't tell a story that doesn't involve emotion, they have no business in any Vulcan academy of any kind.
But maybe Burnham was the one to tell that story, I don't know. I see, like this scene, I feel really bad for Lorca. Because we see here from the scars on his back or whatever, he was probably tortured by someone at some point. He's obviously, got a lot of like emotional issues, which is probably why he is the way he is. And, he's dealing with it. He's trying to do this thing, but at the same time, he doesn't want to lose like the one thing that he has left. He's probably had a lot taken away from him. And this is, disco is the one thing he has left. And, he's about to lose that too. And
it's exactly like Saturday Night Fever.
Yes, and like you really see like the pain on his face in that moment where he's like, please don't do this to me. It will crush me. And, he might not be capable of captaining this ship, but you feel really bad for him, for that. And yeah, it's sad. Like I'm rooting for him here. I'm like, cool, he's going to get to keep his ship. Because
really?
Yeah. And like even though I know like okay, he's probably not a very good person to have in command of people. And there's probably going to be a lot of people who die. He's going to get results, but there's probably going to be a lot of people who die in the process, But
I think, like, I find it strange that from 3 episodes, like at the 3rd episode, it's like, okay, so they've established that, like, Georgiou, she's dead, and Michael Burnham's on a new ship, and she's got a captain who's insane, and, like, it seems pretty clear that she's kind of doomed to repeat the cycle of mutiny.
Yeah, but maybe she'll have help.
And
this time.
That's kind of a bummer. I feel bad for her most of all in this situation, because how that's where it's going.
Yeah.
And Saru is going to be like, "What is this? Just your thing?"
No, see, I think they're setting it up so that Saru will be like, "Okay, I'm going to help you this time."
There's got to be a point where she's like, "We've got to take the captain out of position," and Saru has to say something like, "What is it with you?"
I'm sure that'll happen, and then she'll convince him, and then they'll do it.
Yeah,
together.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. I assume it's probably not going to happen until the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, you never know. It could be whatever episode 9 is.
Could be.
I don't know anything about the upcoming order of episodes except for the little that you've told me.
Episode 7 is next, then episode 8, then episode 9. That's the order.
Wait. Episode 7 is next?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're on episode 6. Yeah.
Yes. No. Yeah, I believe...
I don't know. They all so blend together, man.
I believe episode 9 is the Jonathan Frakes episode. And the only kind of interesting bit there in terms of like storytelling or whatever was... Originally, they were splitting it up so that they were going to show 8 episodes and then break and then come back with episode 9. And they changed it to show 9 episodes and then break and come back with episode 10. And when asked why, Akiva Goldsman said it was because that episode 9 was just the natural break point for the story. Like it just made sense dramatically to have one more episode before you go on hiatus. So I guess that's what's happening. I don't know. Episode 8 is the Saru episode apparently, and then episode 9 is the one that Frakes directed. So there you go.
Okay.
I don't think I want
that guy knows mutiny.
Yeah. I don't think I want my
That's a super nerdy reference. I'm sure only our listeners would get.
I don't think I would want my replicator telling me like the nutritional value of whatever it is I'm ordering, because I feel like that's rather judgmental, and also it would make me feel bad. Like, okay, well then take this back. Maybe before you order, if you say like, hey, can I get something which has an excellent source of antioxidants or whatever, then they could be like, okay, how about some green tea? But, if I order, a Pib Zero, I don't want the replicator being like, oh, this has nothing for you. I'll be like, it's got caffeine, Sometimes that's all you need. Am I right?
I get what you're saying. My first thought was like, I eat the same things every day. And if every day it said the exact same thing, like, like blueberry frosted mini wheats, high sugar, good source of fiber, I'd be like, stop telling me everything about the food. I've literally heard it every day. It's not helpful.
I do think, and I guess maybe I don't know much about nutrition, but, Tilly goes, green drink, extra green, right? That to me sounds like it's incredibly healthy. And then Burnham's like, that's not the right amount of, fatty acids or whatever it is and all this other combination. Like, you need to go with a burrito. I don't know. I don't know much about nutrition, but something tells me that green drink, extra green would be much healthier than a burrito. I don't know. What do I know?
I don't know, man. Hey, who knows what happens in the future, man? We used to think that, you got to eat a lot of grains and breads and stuff. And it turns out that just makes us fat. So, maybe, in another 100, 200 years, they're going to be like, they really nailed it with the burrito.
That could be.
We pretty much never beat that.
That could be, yeah. So, the actress who plays Admiral Cornwell, is it Jane Brooke? Is that her name? I know she's been in a lot of things over the years. At one point, Wendy Crewson herself said that she was going to be on this show as an admiral. And I'm wondering if she was like originally cast in this role and then they recast for whatever reason, or if we're going to see Wendy Crewson later on in the season. I'm curious about that.
Well, they gotta have more admiral. Somebody's gotta, be there to say, like, you're a loose cannon, Lorca. I want your phaser and your comm badge on my desk now.
Well, isn't that what the Vulcan admiral's there for? I don't know. The one guy's already died. Mm-hmm. The guy on the Europa. And then we got this one and the Vulcan. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, they're not going to have, like, no one left. Somebody's got to be there. I don't know.
Yeah,
they're going to run out of characters at some point.
I know Next Gen ran through admirals like crazy because they could never find anyone they liked. But, like, Deep Space Nine and Enterprise only had one admiral each for the most part, They found their admirals.
Deep Space Nine. Yeah, Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
stuck with it.
Yeah, that guy at Barry Jenner. I forget the admiral's name, but yeah. So here, Lorca, thinking on his feet. No, we shouldn't get her. Why would we do that? And Saru's like, what? But that's our thing.
Yeah. But that's, of course that's what he was going to do. We knew that. That's the only part of it that's frustrating for me. Like, I get that.
And this,
they're setting it up, but like, I don't like knowing what's going to happen ahead of time.
and in this moment here where you see the phaser tucked in his thing, I don't know. I mean, I guess, I don't know. To me, that's more of a thematic thing than an actual like piece of information. Like, oh my God, I mean.
Yeah, that was a thing. Like, they did the slow reveal of the phaser on his belt, and like my reaction was like, they're shooting this like it's a reveal.
Yeah.
Like, can you whoa, look at that. He's got a phaser tucked in his pants. And I was like, yeah, he's nuts.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I kind of got that already, you guys.
Yeah. I had kind of the same reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now that we've gone through this episode, let me ask you, we started it by you saying that, you haven't been impressed yet. I'm curious, what's your reaction to this individual episode is. Is it, pretty much on par with what you've seen thus far? Or do you think, maybe the story stepped it up a bit, or what do you think?
I definitely think this episode is, I mean, like, it's better than, like, I think it's probably better than all the other ones. But, like, I still keep running, like, this particular circuit in my head when I watch these, which is like, would this be great if it wasn't a prequel? Mm-hmm. Like, that thought keeps running through my brain while I'm watching it, because I'm like, there are good ideas here, but they seem to all sort of like, they're in this little hamster wheel of like we've got good ideas, let's keep this wheel moving, but like you can't actually go anywhere because like you're stuck. So
you think that like maybe if this were a story that we're set like after Voyager, I mean, like perhaps if nothing else changed aside from the time period that this took place in, and whatever you need to modify in order to, make it, whatever, post Voyager. But if this was essentially this exact story was taking place post Voyager, would you be like, I'm digging this show? But with that knowledge that essentially where this is going to end from a universe standpoint, you're like, well, it's kind of taking away the element of surprise for me or something.
Well, it's the problem is like the science fiction side of it, because like that's what is most exciting about like most of the great Star Trek episodes. It's like a weird idea, and let's explore that weird idea to its fullest extent. And like they established pretty early on, like, oh yeah, we've got lots of crazy stuff going on with the Klingons, and like this like anywhere to anywhere, like mind to mind communication thing. That's super weird. Like there are weird ideas in there, and like the spore drive is like a cool concept. Like there's a mycelium network in subspace. Like somebody definitely on mushrooms came up with that. So like there's a lot of interesting ideas, but like I know that they don't get anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like at some point, like they all terminate, and like the idea that like you could explore new storyline possibilities by having like if the spore drive was legit, they could eliminate distance as a problem. Like distance could stop being an issue, like forever. Like the Voyagers in the Delta Quadrant. Okay, so.
No, I mean,
I was there for brunch.
No, I mean, like, I see what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think that maybe there are certain types of stories that you could tell, and it is interesting that they chose to say, like, this is a new technology that we're developing, which we know isn't going to at least become widespread for whatever reason. And I can't think of another instance, I mean, aside from just, kind of like knowing how stories work, like, Pegasus, you're like, well, we know that this isn't going to be a thing because, we've we know how Star Trek works. But, and I almost feel like that would be the case if this were set post Voyager, like with the mushroom drive. Like, Star Trek is about going places, right? So if you take away the distance and you can automatically transport to wherever, like, I feel like you're losing, you know, it's about the journey, not the destination, right? To the journey. So you'd lose that from Star Trek. And I don't think that that's something that they would want to necessarily lose from a storytelling standpoint. I don't know. I mean, you think about, you know, like why they set this here and why they chose to tell this story. And I really think that in a lot of ways, it's just sort of a side product of what Fuller's original vision for this show was, where each season was going to, you know, be set in a different time period. And it essentially, I think, was going to be like the history of, well, at the very least, the Federation, but my guess would be the history of Federation-Klingon relations, you know, just from, you know, pre-TOS to post-Voyager. And, you know, TV being what it is, they just started with pre-TOS and are stuck there. You know what I mean? Which I think is fine.
Yeah.
But
I know what you mean. It's just that to me, it seems kind of like a betrayal of the idea of Star Trek being a show about exploring new ideas and new ways of doing things. And it's like, it seems like that's become terrifying. Like since, I don't know, probably around like 99, like everybody seems to think about like, where do we go from here? And they go, ooh, we don't go anywhere from here. We go back. Because the idea of going forward into the future and the possibilities of what happens next, everyone's just terrified of that. And that's like the least Star Trek thing possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I can see that. I mean, like, when they said like, oh, this show is going to be set in the prime timeline, I'm like, you're going back, you know, in maybe a different way, but, you know, I'm like, you're going backwards. Why are you doing that? And, you know, when I heard, you know, Fuller's idea for it sort of, you know, going through the history of Star Trek, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense why you'd set it in the prime timeline then, because you're, you know, reflecting on everything that's come before. But now that you're not doing that anymore, and I understand there's the whole business side of it, but like I really feel like from a storytelling standpoint, I mean, if you set this in the Kelvin timeline, you do open yourself up to other possibilities that are maybe limited in the prime timeline because, you know, maybe they do have a mushroom drive in that timeline. You know, who's to say they don't? So
yeah, I'd like to look up like the legality of that, because it does seem very strange that they would just have free reign to access the movie elements. I feel like there's no way they could do that.
I don't know, you know, who knows exactly what it is, but I get the impression that the reason why they do it is because it's sort of like a, you know, like a gentleman's agreement or whatever, where they're like, okay, we've finally separated and you've got your Kelvin timeline and we've got everything else. So how about we just play in this sandbox and you play in the Kelvin sandbox, and then that way we don't have to share our toys. You know, I think that that's really the reason why they're doing this, not necessarily because they legally can't use the Kelvin timeline, but because they just don't want to deal with it. You know? Yeah,
it's possible. Like somewhere in my head, it seems like it has to be a legal issue, but I mean, it might not be. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard both things.
I was just thinking about like CBS and Paramount and all these different like relationships, and I thought like, how can they possibly? There's no way. So like, some part of my brain is saying like, I don't see how that's possible, but like, you know, maybe it is just an agreement.
Could be. I don't know. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks for joining me, Max. Any place that people can find you on the internet? CommentaryTrackstars.com. There's a place, right?
Yeah, I'm on CommentaryTrackstars.com.
All right. Well, you can find me on CommentaryTrackstars.com, and you can also find me right here on Trek.fm doing a show called Stage 9, and you can find me on thenerdparty.com doing a show called Great Shot Kid, and you can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K. Be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. Live from the Edge airs on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern with Bruce and Brandy and will be released as a podcast on Tuesday mornings. Then we've got this show, Tracks from the Edge, which is our commentary show on Wednesdays. We'll discuss your feedback on Postcards from the Edge on Thursday. And of course, you can catch the full analysis on the Edge main show on Friday. To wrap up the week, join us for Notes from the Edge on Saturday with our own Chris Jones for links between Discovery and the broader franchise. You'll find all of these in the main feed for the Edge and in the Trek FM master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery. The best place to do that is on the Babel Conference, which is our listener group on Facebook, where Amy Nelson will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us an email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Just choose to send to a show and choose the Edge. We'd also like to thank our associate producers today, Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoab Mirza, and Richard Rutledge. Thank you very much for all your support, guys. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer yourself, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. All right. Well, thanks again, Max. It's great to talk to you about new Star Trek. And
always good.
Yes, and we will be back next week to discuss episode 7 of Discovery.